Joker, Folie, Deux is directed by Todd Phillips and stars Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, and among others. And this is the sequel to 2019's Joker, in which Arthur Fleck is on trial for his crimes from the first film. And along the way, he ends up meeting fellow prisoner. While he's in Arkham, he meets fellow prisoner Harley Quinn, who Lady Gaga goes by Lee in this. And they basically go into this kind of, well, if you know from Joker and Harley, they get into that kind of mad love for each other and everything. And I'll leave it there because there's some other stuff that I won't go into spoilers with, but essentially it deals with the trial involving with Arthur's crimes from the first film, along with the delusion and everything with him getting into the mind of the Joker manifestation of him, and the way that the madness is pretty much going along with him and Harley. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Todd Phillips, who has made a lot of movies in the past that I really enjoyed, from a lot of comedies, especially from Old School, Road Trip, The First Hangover, and just some other, in Due Date and among others. And when 2019's Joker came out, it really got me really hyped, because it was great to see that DC was pretty much doing some different types of comic book films that we have never seen before in this kind of regard. And while the first Joker may have took some liberties from movies like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, I still think it worked in its own regard, because it still was able to truly showcase of what you could do when it came to taking like the guy that's basically mentally insane with Joker, or with Joaquin Phoenix's character, and then seeing his uprising, becoming the person that we know as Joker. And so not only was it a big surprise for 2018, but it was also one of the best years but one of my favorite movies of the year. And so after that movie came out, I didn't think they were going to do a sequel, because I feel like it was one of those kind of movies that was kind of a one and done. And I think for a while they actually weren't even going to do a sequel, because at the time that Joker came out, they were planning on doing what was called a DC Black kind of label that they were going to release, of standalone type of movies that were outside of at the time they were outside of the DC Extended Universe and stuff. And I would have been really happy how we would have got some like other types of DC properties of movies maybe falling into that kind of style. Like I would have loved to see like maybe a Two-Face movie, or just some other characters that we probably never seen before that are from the comics, and doing something that kind of like Elseworlds type of films and stuff. And so going to this one, I can honestly say that I got interested, but at the same time I was going a little skeptical, because from what I heard, there were rumors that surrounded the movie is going to be basically announced as a musical. And I see the idea on paper of seeing what they could probably see about trying to do that kind of style, because, well, if you've seen in different incarnations of Joker, there are instances where the madness that surrounds Joker is pretty much where he breaks out in song on some occasions and stuff, like you've seen in like the Killing Joke movie and things like that. And I'm sure there's other incarnations in the comics that feel that way. But I think that doing it as a traditional musical, I think was not something I was expecting, because there was instances that I heard about where Todd Phillips said it wasn't going to be a traditional musical, where it was going to be basically like getting into the mind and basically seeing that the Joker is pretty much imagining all the stuff that's going on, and he's doing his own little musical thing. And so that's what I thought going into with this one. And while that is partially true, it does really go more than what we were expecting. And so I will flat out tell you that this is a full-on musical. So for those of you who haven't or not really been in musicals, just know what you're getting into when you go into this one. But going from the trailers, I will say that I was still interested, because I also was curious on how they're going to bring Lady Gaga into this, especially, her coming off of big film roles like in A Star Is Born and stuff like that. And while I have enjoyed some of Lady Gaga's music, and from what I've seen of Star Is Born, she does work in her own right as an actress. And so going into her doing a different type of feel as Harley Quinn seemed really interesting. And so after upon seeing the film, I can honestly say that this was a big, major step down from the first one. It really is disappointing for me with this, because this is one of those movies that I was looking forward to, but it was the opposite of what I expected. And this is a film, to me, I think that while it may have, I can see the appeal that it has for those that are into it and everything, I can definitely see why it has definitely a polarized response from a lot of either people that either love it or hate it. And I can say that I don't hate the movie, but it is a major step down compared to the first one. And it really makes it seem like everything that was unfolded in the first one was really more of like an afterthought with this one. And so to get my pros out of the way, I will say that the performances in this are really top notch. Like Joaquin Phoenix, he earned his Oscar in the first one. It was well deserved, and he really shines again as Joker in this, and also as Arthur Fleck, being that very type of getting into his mind, so to speak, of getting into singing and stuff like that. And the way that we kind of learn about why he is as a character is interesting, and the way that he basically pulls off like he does in the first one with being into the crazy style that we know from Joker, but also the kind of nuanced type of man that he is, with being pretty much trying to very broken, so to speak, that they're going for. I do, on his performance level, it really works in its own regard. And then the same thing goes for Lady Gaga. I think that she really shines in her own regard with playing a different type of Harley Quinn that we haven't seen before. Where I'm not going to go into too much detail on her character, but let's just say that there's elements that we know of Harley as far as the stuff that we've seen from the comics and also from the animated series of Batman, the animated series, that fold with the whole her getting inside his mind and stuff too, that I thought played a really big impact on it. And I do like what they do with it. But I also have a con that mainly has to do with the writing with both of their characters, where it feels like none of it is really amounts to a lot of development much, because we hardly even see Lady Gaga throughout the film. And because the majority of the time, they're both really separated a lot to where we don't really get enough focus with both of them. But with both of them together. But Gaga brings their own with this type of psychological type of character in their own right, and I think it really works to that level. Now, the rest of the cast are great too. It's great seeing Brendan Gleeson as this, and I thought that he was great as the guard. That's pretty much, you're kind of conflicted. You're kind of thinking if he's like really on like Arthur's side, or if he's getting into some stuff that he's doing, or if he's like really just like giving him a hard time and stuff. But I'll get into more of the performances later, get into more of the characters later, because it really seems like there's not really a whole lot of focus on some of the stuff they bring up, because it seems like a lot of the characters that they throw in here, they really don't really get to do much. Like, we finally get to see Harvey Dent in the movie, which was cool. But I'll get into some more of the cons on that later. Because there seemed like it was a different type of opportunity that they could have done with, that I'll bring up later with. But I thought the actor that played him was pretty good, and I appreciate that they tried to at least add some other stuff from the Batman universe to speak of that I enjoyed. And then also the production design, this is really great, top notch too, especially the look of Gotham and stuff, like the first one, with the cinematography, the way it gives that very kind of like a gritty type of look, like the first movie. And then the Arkham scenes are really great too, especially with that kind of has like that very kind of like, kind of something that means me out of the Gotham TV series in that regard, that I thought was really nice. And so, now as far as the musical sequences themselves, they can be hit and miss. I do enjoy a few of the songs that they break out. It mainly has to do with the ones that involve with Harley and Joker together on doing most of the duets together, especially two of them that stand out. One being like this kind of talk show thing, and then the court scene I thought was really great, and everything. And then also, I will also appreciate some of the musical score being back too was great. And on top of that, when it gets to the actual trial itself going on, there is an emotional part that happens where they bring in one of the witnesses that's from the first film, and this whole scene that involves with Puddles, with being, talking about how he feels like he was, a victim and everything that was going on, and seeing everything, all the trauma that he had to, I thought was not only very heartbreaking, but it was very emotional. I thought it really stood out the most, and there's elements that really work in here as far as where the movie was going, and I think that the movie was also touching based on the legacy that Arthur left behind in the first one. It really works to a certain level to a point. But if I'm going to get into my cons now, I will have to say that unfortunately the movie does feel like it's more of an epilogue to the first film. If you see movies like Godfather Part 3, or even the movie called El Camino, A Breaking Bad Story, how they basically fill in just the aftermath of like a said character. That's pretty much it does with this one. And I have the same reaction like this is how I feel with Godfather Part 3. And I feel like there's even elements of Godfather Part 3 I think work better than this one, in that it seems to me that they don't really do much. Because in this one, they don't really do much to really explore much new material than what we would already got from the first movie about Arthur himself. Because a lot of this stuff they keep bringing into, especially in the court scenes, they're mainly stuff that we pretty much already know about Arthur, and they don't really add anything new. It's just the same old, okay, he's crazy, he had a rough childhood, things like that, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, the movie doesn't really go into wanting to actually expand on stuff to really advance the story, if that makes sense. It's just one of those where they keep basically recapping the events of the first film. They even come to the point where they're even showing like flashbacks of scenes from the first one. And in a way, this is also kind of reminding me of in a way, it almost just seems like, okay, I get that you're not trying to rehash the actual plot of the first movie, but when you're just basically not even if you're just basically not even like advancing the story itself, and you're just reiterating what's going on, it's almost like, okay, you're just basically just doing a retelling of what we already know. You want to try that. It just feels like it's not really doing anything like new for what we get with this. Because even with the stuff we get into to Harley Quinn, that it feels like she is there to essentially be the one to represent of what we as fans of the first movie were pretty much wanting to see how the movie unfolds and stuff. And I'm not going to go into spoilers or anything, but essentially toward the end, it essentially makes it seem like the movie doesn't really go anywhere. And if it does, it was not on a good kind of level where it was trying to do. Because it seemed like it was essentially... I feel like this is the kind of movie that they were making, that because the movie was so successful with being a billion-dollar film, that they basically got wind of pretty much trying to do something of their own, with Todd Phillips wanting to do his own kind of movie, in that he wanted to basically do what Joe Dante did with Gremlins 2. But the difference is that you could see all the craziness that worked in that film compared to what they do in this one, because as much as there's some fun stuff in this, especially this opening sequence, by the way, that I thought that was this animated sequence that's in the style of Looney Tunes, was very well animated and funny. I feel like it doesn't really amount to anything for a lot of time, because even the musical numbers themselves, a lot of time, you could easily cut some of them out and you wouldn't really miss something, because it's stuff that we pretty much already are not really adding to the actual story itself at times. And on top of that, it has an ending that I feel like just makes it seem like, what did we really learn from all this? And also, we don't really get much with Harley Quinn, because for a majority of the film, they're pretty much split apart, where we don't really see a lot of the same scenes together. And even when we do get to the actual stuff that's involved later on in the film with her, it almost seems like it wasn't really going anywhere after a while. And they do have a ending that's very poignant, and I see what they were going for, but with her character. But it seemed like, they really could have reached more of their whole potential of what they really could have accomplished in their third act. And so that was definitely a lot of this movie was it get me really interested for a while, especially despite all the other issues that involve with characters not really fleshed out. And on top of that, there's also, if they also go into this whole type of plot that involves where we're trying to basically get into this kind of split personality type of thing with Joker and Arthur, and as basically like Joker and Arthur are two separate entities, and that could probably work on a good idea, but it only, I feel like, would work if it was a Two-Face spinoff, because Two-Face, who is the literal split personality of Harvey Dent, who also Harvey Dent himself appears in this, I feel like would have been probably better, well written and executed in that type of film. Because doing with Joker, we know who he is, because we already know that it's established from the first film, and them pretty much backpedaling to what we already were building up to, and just recapping stuff just really makes it feel like, what was really the point of all this? It just seems it's not really wanting to really go the full route of what we're expecting, because even the whole legacy stuff about how he's supposed to be a symbol and stuff, it's never really fully taken it. It doesn't reach. It's very messy with its writing in that regard. This is a film that, they spent the last couple of years even debating they were going to make for a while, and it really seemed like it really didn't need to be made from the get-go, and it just makes me want to go back and watch the first one. And I also noticed that seems to be the problem that it has with Todd Phillips doing sequels, because the same issue he had with the Hangover sequels. The first movie was I know this is off topic, but it's the same thing with the Hangover sequels. The first movie was so great, but then when 2 and 3 came around, it was like, how do you do that? How do you top that with the first one? It just seems like Todd Phillips is only good with solo films, and I don't mean that to diss, because I actually don't mind Hangover 2. I'm just saying, but I don't like Hangover 3. I'm just saying that when it comes to those type of movies, it's like, what are you really trying to do than what we already got from the first film? You know what I mean? And so there's more I can go into detail, but it has to lead into other spoilers that I'm not going to go into detail with. So with that, I found this to be a truly disappointing film of the year for me, and I don't know if it'll rank in my dishonorable mentions or not. It may or may not, depending on how the rest of the year goes around. But with that, I'm giving it a high disaster grade on the Film Freaks meter. So, for those of you who've also seen Joker, Folie, Deux, and also the first one, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.